So here is a cheers to you. Work like you don't need the money. Love like you've never been hurt. Dance like no one is watching. Screw like it's being filmed. And drink like a true Irishman. From Anonymous. Cheers to you guys. We're going to be talking about enterprise logging. Last week we covered Windows logs. This week we're going to cover how to centralize those, manage those, and create a model that you can actually threat hunt off of, which is part of the threat hunting primer. You have to talk about logs in order to determine what it is that you're going to search for, and then we're going to talk about how to stack those logs effectively in a manner that's collaborative and useful to you, and multiple different ways that you can do that, because some of it's very expensive and enterprisey, big money, big brain things, and there's other methods that are lighter per se, and you can use those methodologies to only collect the logs that you need. And we'll talk about both of them tonight. So coming up, we have the U.S. exposes the attackers' helpers in Russia to intentionally punish Russia. So these links up in the chat. There you go. All right. Top level stories here. Biden's administration on Thursday, and again, reminder, please no politics in the chat. It's, I understand U.S. politics can be a minefield. We're not here to cover U.S. politics. We're just talking about when it involves hacking. So, the administration on Thursday revealed new details about the Russian intelligence, disinformation, and cyber operations, including specific names of the companies, which is a little bit unusual, that allegedly help facilitate cyber attacks, and websites accused of intentionally spreading false narratives and information and disinformation, especially related to the 2016 campaign. The information release is partly damaging to Russian intelligence services, very specifically to a technology park near the Black Sea that was used by Russian agents and under a military intelligence directorate for, as I said, Russia and the GRU. So, direct quote, "This is how you roll up people's networks," said James Lewis, Senior Vice President at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. "You identify them, so they have to rebuild their tradecraft and rebuild their cover. It's cheap for us, but can be extremely costly to them." It's very true. Infrastructure and backstory can actually be extremely expensive, usually because of it depends on how long that you want to acquire it over. Reputation can be ruined in an instant, but can take years to build. So, according to the U.S. Treasury Department, a Russian cybersecurity company called Positive Technologies hosts large-scale conventions that are then used as recruiting pipelines for the Russian intelligence agencies at the Federal Security Service, FSB, and the GRU. Part of that particular convention that they talked about, they put things like electric cars, Teslas, very specifically, ATMs, technology out, and they encourage people to show up and to attack it and show public attacks. Now, this sounds a lot like what also happens in the U.S. as well. At least the conventions, that is. I don't know anything about the intelligence community and where they're pulling their pipeline from. The disclosure about the company's alleged links to Russian intelligence come just after reports that it was considering an initial public offering, also known as an IPO. This is the part that's a little key here, is they were starting to talk about an IPO that was accordingly worth up to about currently the company's earning about $73 million, and its targeted valuation was between $2 to $4 billion on the IPO, or the initial public offering. For those unfamiliar in the financial sector, that's where they go and they join a form of a stock market. So many trades, so many exchanges, so many different ways that this can be done. And I'm not, any way, shape, or form, financial resource for the information. Just the basics of IPOs, though. It's when a company goes public, which means that their profits can be dividends, or however the scheme works. You get what I'm saying. However the finances work out. Anyway, point being is that the company was about to go big, and on that initial going big, this very timely targeted release of information, like, oh, this is the front company for a big funneling program into all these things that attack all over the world, would definitely hurt a valuation. It's likely that many of the details about the intelligence service agency support networks were classified until recently, but the decision to release them was a result of an internal U.S. government debate about how to impose stiff costs for what the U.S. calls malign behavior, aka, I want to say this, low fidelity intelligence or poor actions or activities. Can't directly tie it. Malign behavior is basically gray area acting, is another way you could say that. Again, I'm also not an intelligence expert, so I'm not even going to tiptoe down that road. All I'm going to say is they can only do so many sanctions. It can only hurt the economy in so much of a way. This is another way to throw something out there that's intentionally tit for tat. And as we've talked about, is there a cyber war going on? Yeah, probably. And this seems very likely another method of tit for tat politics. So anyway, moving forward, I've found something that is also the FBI launches an operation to wipe out hacker access to hundreds of U.S. servers. Now, this one is unique, and we've been covering this. This is actually an ongoing story. We've been talking about Microsoft. We've been talking about the vulnerabilities, the ones that were released a little while ago. And now we have an even follow-up to the follow-up to the follow-up. So let me throw these links in the chat. I am the one who spams links. Okay. So very specifically, according, Houston authorized the FBI to actually do an operation to copy and remove known open backdoors from Microsoft Exchange email servers in the United States. Now, these are not removing the vulnerabilities. These are removing the backdoors. So they've been, after the discovery of the vulnerabilities, the 4 previous vulnerabilities, the Microsoft discovered that a group known as Hafnium operating is a Chinese state-sponsored hacking group. When they discovered that, they also discovered 4 previously unknown vulnerabilities that was rushed to patch. Now, these vulnerabilities still exist in these Microsoft Exchange platforms. However, they were exploited by either this group or another group, and they were successful in initiating a backdoor on the Exchange servers. Now, the FBI is trying to at least coordinate with these businesses to intentionally, fix these vulnerabilities, as well as correct the issues that exist, as well as, prevent reinfection. However, they've seen a rash of ransomware that has been occurring, and with the rash of ransomware, they were afraid that if they identified these backdoors and if they left them in place, that the ransomware could then be used against these exchanges as well. They were able to determine basically the type of code or command that was necessary, and they were actually able to send a command remotely to these pay shells and these to these web shells that would then delete the payload in the backend and close the session. So they would intentionally tear down the session and destroy the persistent mechanism. Now, the vulnerabilities still exist. If the vulnerability still exists, they can put on a new payload. But because they know this one so well, if they did put on a new payload, they are authorized to go and cover this back up. Now, here's the problem here. All right. give you a quick quote. The operation removed one early hacking group's remaining web shells, which could have been used to maintain and escalate persistence unauthorized access to U.S. networks. The statement said the FBI conducted the removal by issuing command. Okay, I explained all that. Continue on. So with that, and while it's informing the owners, the Justice Department said it was successful. The FBI said that it demonstrates the department's commitment to disrupting hacking activities using all of our legal tools, not just prosecutions. Okay. And this is it is believed that this is the first known case of the FBI effectively cleaning up private networks following a cyber attack. Now, this is akin to if you have a physical house, the FBI coming in and patching a window that was broken. That's my 2 cents. It's not even patching a window that was broken, because that was the vulnerability, right? Realistically, it's like locking the window that is broken, that was unlocked because somebody broke it. And I understand that they can't patch the vulnerabilities, and I'm not asking them to either. I don't want you making configuration changes. I'm trying to determine whether or not I'm okay or not okay with this. They are effectively changing the baseline activity of a business's use case. They're doing it in bulk and remotely. Just seems like it's a bit of a slippery slope. I'm not for or against it. I don't, and I'm not telling you to be for or against it either. The conversation here is just whether or not third-party security providers within a federal group should or should be able to, or can they continue to go into businesses networks remotely they are, and it's a thought process. It's a conversation. It was something here that I noted that was really big, because it's a gray area, right? We're talking gray areas. I noted it because it's the first known case of the FBI effectively like shutting down known backdoors. And the thing is that I saw that in the article, and then I think about it and I'm like, that's actually not exactly the case. I want to say it was back in the 2000s. So one of you are probably going to correct me. That there was a poison DNS server that was hanging out over in Europe somewhere. I think it was Europe. And it had a massive command and control tied to it. If the FBI or the can't remember the amount of agencies that were working on it, but if they had just took it offline, it would have actually completely derailed the internet capacity of a ton of Windows XP machines, because they had their DNS resolver pointed to the wrong thing. So what they actually did is they left the server up, they left it running, they cleaned it up where it was appropriately syncing to the other DNS, architecture. If you don't know DNS architecture, take a look at A-level records and things like that. But basically it was replicating. They fixed it and they left it up and they left it running for something like 7 years to basically let the malware kind of like let the next cycle of Windows 7 catch up and be distributed to where they didn't feel so bad if if whoever else was remaining, if they DNS poison, if they got DNS poison, they could take it in and get it fixed, and it was well known and stuff like that. But yeah, and because what was happening was the DNS requests that were resolved. So I believe the attack was they were poisoning the DNS resolver on the Windows XP system itself. So they would intentionally force the computer to resolve to this random DNS server. And then when you would try to go to popular websites or whatever else, they would put in ad versions of the websites with redirector tags. They would do just straight up not let you go there and point you to a different advertiser or things like it. It was really tricky the way they did it, but it was intentionally done to make money. California. How many of those servers were government vendors or contractors? I wonder. I wonder that too. Again, you guys might be able to find the story. I will find it and I will throw it up in Discord after this. I do remember it very specifically though, that because I found it so odd, where they actually had to, it was a form of command and control, right? It's DNS poisoning, so it's an older attack, definitely. But they had to leave it up and running, you know? And so it makes me think of this, where this isn't actually the first time that the FBI has cleaned up, but what makes this unique is that they are physically altering a baseline configuration. Though malicious, it is a malicious configuration change, and they're cleaning it up. Is that okay? Is that, I mean, like, should we hand it off to FEMA? I don't know. I don't know. It's unique, you know. It's, I mean, it's not very often that you hear hey BSEC, we're talking about XP machines from like way back in the day, and another instance of this happening, where the FBI is taking over the control of the situation and the remediation for a portion, but back then they were taking over an illegal server, and then they just made it was still illegal, but they made it run the appropriate version of DNS, so that way nothing was poisoned. Now in this instance right now, we actually have the same agency that's reaching out and cleaning up. And again, you know, I can see the issue, because think about it this way though too, they're kind of preemptively cleaning up their own work too, because if those backdoors were used and ransomware was initiated, the FBI would be called, right? The FBI would be called. So it just almost seems like they're proactively cleaning up the mess that they were going to have to clean up in the first place too. There's so many different ways to look at this, and this is a story that sets a precedent too. So it's one of those things that, you know, if you're going to be in the blue space, you might want to read up on the 2 articles I posted up there and take a look, and, you know, really think about it from an ethical consideration, as well as because tech is cutting edge, and something that I want you guys to think about being a part of the show and the environment and everything else like that, is the decisions we make today will affect those that come after us tomorrow. And what that means is, you know, when it comes to these tech decisions, like, oh, it's okay, this seems like it's an all right thing, we're setting a precedence for operation for generations to come as well. So, and that depends on the outcome. So, you know, it's something to be very considerate about, especially in the tech sector, where it's like, oh, this is the first time that this has happened. Well, then we need to do our best to get it right. It's not just something that we can be like, it's too much work, you know. Anyway. Excuse me. Okay. Thank you for the stretch. So, moving forward. Enough to rattle the brains and talk about the efficacies of life. So last week we talked about hydrate. Thank you, DK78. Oh, you got BSEC. You realized I had hydrate. Got it. All of you guys realize that I have hydrate on all of a sudden. Ebo, you need help. All right. So, moving forward, last week we talked about Windows logging. All right. And the reason, now to be clear, there's plenty of other operating systems and areas to be logged within operating systems. Linux is a whole course in and of itself that we can do for a week. OS X, another whole course. Even the one I gave you on Windows was nothing but just like, hey, this thing exists. You can go and research. So with that, I was more so starting with what the 80th percentile range-ish is for users. As far as an operating system goes, as the precursor to really describe that logging is a thing that exists. OS's operating systems all have some form of logging that, as Blue Team, we should be aware of. Also, most applications, especially major applications, as well as any type of professional system, will also have logging. I say that to say that tonight we are going to talk about how you get all those logs and start piling them up in order to threat hunt. Now, there's two main ways to do this, okay? One is going to be a on-demand collection. And what that means is through whatever means that you're using, you define the characteristics of what you're looking for, and then you query the entirety of your targets or your scope of your investigation, and you pull the information back. You evaluate it, and then you might reconfigure to see what other information you want to pull, and then you continue in this way. Now, this method, okay, if it had to have a type of relevance, I would describe it as fishing. Fishing, if you think about it, is a form of hunting, okay? It's fishing because what you're doing is you're blind to a particular area of what is out there. You don't always see the full context of the environment. You kind of know it. You might, especially if you go and you visit a lot, you might be very familiar with it. I sunk a bunch of tires in this area strapped to a log intentionally to help create a, environment that's great for catfish. Not saying I have, I'm just Southern enough that I know what I'm talking about. So with that would be what I just described, where you are writing a script for collection and you're sending it out and you're aggregating all this information back. Now, in that instance, okay, that phishing type of threat hunting, what that is you have taken a hypothesis. I believe that this activity is happening, and you've either researched it and read plenty of reports, or you have taken and peeled it apart. And what I mean by that is you've ran it in a network where you have monitoring turned on, you've used red team tactics, or you've used red team tool sets, and you've torn it apart, and you know that the logs, if this hypothetically was existing, you know that the logs exist in this manner. It might be registry key changes. If it's OSX, it might be system logs that carry a specific identifier. For example, might have the word manufacturer in it if it's a USB device. If it's reg key changes, it might be underneath a certain architecture and then fall under a 6-digit regex expression that you can, evaluate, that type of stuff. So you have to know a type of A, what you're looking for, and B, what does it look like once you find it, all right? In this, when you go fishing, you generally don't just say, I'm going to go fishing and bring a hook and a pole and whatever's biting is going to bite. You at least generally know, I think I'm going to go bass fishing. And in this case, I'm going to use a popping bobber and I'm going to throw it out there. And in this stream, I'm going to pop it back as I reel it back in, and I'll catch, a small or largemouth bass. If you're going catfishing, though, you would use chicken livers or chicken hearts or really anything that smells slimy and disgusting, tie it to a 10-pound lead, throw it in the mud, and wait a couple hours. But the point is that you have an intent and purpose when you go and you do the fishing, the same as when you do the threat hunting. You can't just go, I wonder what looks suspicious. At least not with this style. So with that, to actually go and find something, you would have some form of evaluation, know what you're talking about, know what you're looking for. You would write a script, and then you would have some form of an administrative permission that allows you to reach out and touch and pull those scripts back. Now, I don't recommend this version, at least not in this methodology. And I'll tell you why. When you start off, this is one of the more difficult methods unless you have somebody more senior than you in doing it. Now, I recommend that you can do it if with assistance. And what do I mean by that? If you get an EDR solution or an AV solution, some form of solution that can automate the search and results, at least half the pull for you, and then you combine it with the scripting, then it's a lot better. On top of that, one of the common issues that we have right now is the work from home solution. So when you're working from home, unless your individuals have to log in via VPN, when you send the script out, there's not going to be a lot of response. Now, there are collection methods that involve agents. Tanium's one of them off the top of my head, where you can start just querying your network and they'll go back and forth. In some manners, when you have support with agent-based telemetry, you can definitely utilize that methodology that I described. Okay. However, if you're starting off and you don't have anybody to sit with, Angry Amoeba, XDR solution, really? Okay, I'm not even going to. Nope. Anyway, man, I had to stretch that one out. I'm not mad. I just XDR solution. You know what? I will even talk to XDR solution for a second, but in a serious manner, because the thing is that you have network security monitoring. You have DNS monitoring that usually comes on a lot of different agents. You have EDR solutions. You have AV solutions. All of these things monitor the exact same stuff that XDR is supposedly new and improved and everything else. If you do threat hunting correctly, if you do log engineering correctly, then you don't need XDR. Okay. The problem is that you get these people who go and they buy solutions for environments, and then they don't think of the ecosystem in whole, or they don't take and put one person in charge of the logging solution. And that's how you get these bulbous, unusable log sources that all say different things with all different names. And it's incredibly difficult and mucky and murky to try and search through versus a clean, streamlined return on investment for the products that you're getting. All right. XDR is a solution if you're poorly managing your enterprise security. That's why I don't like XDR. So with this, it is a log source, so I'll even throw it in there. Wherever your logs are coming from, when you're talking about threat hunting, the point is to either do, and by the way, that light, what I'm talking about when you go and you query your network and you evaluate and then you query your network, what I'm talking about is it's more of like an alpine versus an expedition type of movement. And what that means is it's very light, should be faster, it doesn't require as much enterprise engineering and things like that. What you would want to do to start this off is you want to, whatever your hypothesis is, you will have to really study it very well. And then you would have to take what you studied of that hypothesis. So for example, let's say that you're a smaller network, so all of your devices are based off of West Coast time, and you think that there is an intruder to your network when everybody is out of work, and you're a very small company. So you would then want to hypothesize this. You would then evaluate, hey, the developer is raiding with the party of 7. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome to the Cyber Insecurity Network. My name is Jack, or Sec IT Guy, and I am hosting Tipsy Cyber tonight. I'm drinking some Woodford Reserve. I appreciate you guys stopping in. And we are talking threat hunting. Talking threat hunting solutions. I'm actually going to switch over into... Here we go. So with threat hunting, what we're looking at is we're talking about the two primary methods. Now, if you have a smaller network, not really well engineered solution for log management or log collection, what you can do is you can collect everything up via scripting or a pull configuration of some sort to really satisfy your logs. Now, what I was saying is, for example, if you believe that there are people that are logging into your network and attacking it, and you believe that they are foreign actors, or at least outside of where your company acts, which is the West Coast, then you could just simply take a look at the AD logons. And with the AD logons, you might find that people are logging in at 4 in the morning. With that, you can also take a look at the IP addressing that's coming from the logons. And if you see that the IP addressing is falling way outside of the regional codec, then you might start asking questions. Now, that is an extremely... we have automation right now. It's very common to have automation today of stuff called impossible travel. In fact, you have likely seen this with Google when you try to log in from certain browsers, especially if you're using a VPN. Possible travel is when you log in from an IP address, and let's just say it's in the Midwest, and then all of a sudden you turn on a VPN because you want to check out some South Korean anime, and your IP address, when you try to log back into Google, and it's showing up in a browser in South Korea. All of a sudden you have impossible travel. There's no way in 12 minutes that you translated that far distance. What it looks like is, it looks like somebody is attacking, quote unquote. What we're finding nowadays is that realistically, it's usually the use of VPN. Somebody VPNs regionally for X, Y, and Z reason. And there you go. That's impossible travel. Again, the attack that I was talking about is based on with the regionality of it, and you're trying to find foreign or somebody outside of your time zone, and you're taking a look at odd hour logins. That would be a very small instance and very basic type of investigation. Realistically, the types of more complicated investigations that we look at is abuse of monitoring processes or bypassing of security controls, or intentionally locking out processes so things can't be accessed within memory to evaluate. I am not an XDR expert, California. Not at all. Anyway. Okay. So moving forward, let's go to the second one. And with that, let's throw these links in the chat. Now, this is the second one. Realistically, if you have a larger enterprise network, and when I say a larger enterprise network, I'm talking about you start off at about 1,000 people and you start working your way up. That's where you want to take a look at this type of modeling and enterprise engineering for logs. So first off, we're going to talk about, I want to say that data analytics, log engineering, actually reviewing logs en masse, data pools, data lakes, data oceans, all that stuff. There are literally 4-year degrees and master's programs that are dedicated to this skill and this tradecraft. If anything, I am but an ambassador to it and a hobbyist, to be clear. But I do enjoy it. I know quite a bit about it. So I was talking about previously about the collection method where you can use a script to go and collect. Realistically, what you're looking for when you're talking about enterprise, though, is you want to automate as much of the task as necessary. So collection, aggregation, which is the centralization of it, also the transport of it, transformation, which is a standardization model to some form of interconnectivity between multiple vendors, as well as allows you data portability, which is really important. And then, your analysis, which is your processing or your use, depending on what type of metric and evaluation. So with that, collection, as I said, EDR, NSM, Windows logs, OSX logs, Linux logs, Sysmon, system logs, XDR, networking, AV patching, even vulnerability and patch management, whatever. If there's a system, there is a log. Depending on the operation and the purpose of that system will depend on whether or not you should be centralizing that log and how often you should be centralizing that log, or if it's something you should be checking. For example, as needed. For example, do you need to pull all of the browser artifacts regarding Chrome? No, I don't think so. Because you're going to have just a bunch of things like tokens and cookies, and you don't need all the browser artifacts. However, URLs visited, that one URLs visited in and by itself is, you can base almost an entire investigation off of the URLs that are visited. So that's really beneficial. When you're talking about EDR solutions, do you need all the logs? That one would be pretty handy to have most of the logs that are available in EDR. Now, how do you collect logs? Well, as I said, it can be scripted, it can be, and that scripting or automated, or you can do it manually. With that, you can also do it in a scheduled format. So like every week, once a week, all computers' logs get collected, but it's broken up by region. And then, or you can move it into event-based. So if there's a security alert, it will automatically dump the entirety of the logs to one centralized location based on this related security event that is now in your, in your queue or your tracker to do. It can be based on, I've even seen NSMs that behind every alert, you had the last 15 and the next 15 packets that were involved and any files that were passed within the 10-second window. I've set up some other stuff too. It can go on and on, but the point being is you need some point of collection and some type of standardization and schedule. And on top of that, you, the analyst, the engineer, or the person evaluating this or making recommendations about it, you need to know the collection schedule, because you doing a threat hunt on the last 24 to 48 hours of data will have different results if you do a 72-hour pull. So if every 72 hours something rolls and you're looking at only the last 48 hours of data, then you're going to miss out on a 24-hour, or you're not going to get another collection pull for, another 24 hours. So what you're getting is stale stuff. So it's important to understand not only where the logs are generated, as if we talked last week, but also how often they're collected and where they're collected to in the repository. Sec IT guy, isn't this log collection what a SIM is for? Correct. So a SIM, I've heard it as security event and information management system. I've also heard it as system, event information management. It is a marketing term. So I've heard it multiple different ways. Point being, though, the idea behind an actual SIM is it was supposed to be not only a centralization of log collection, what I'm talking about here, but also a response capability. So with incidents that you see and view, can you also then pivot down deeper to see relative information that's combined between the two, and then respond via one push button instance? Now, I've not yet seen a decent version of that actually operating. I've seen very good investigative services that are centralized, but I've not seen the response built-in capability where one single button I can kill a session. And even then, even when it's baked into a platform, like, oh, that's there, I haven't seen a security team and an information technology team that's willing to fork over that type of control to, just the instant responders. Because the thing is that an instant responder doesn't know everything that's going on in the network. Their job is to manage the case in the instant. They identify the security aspects of it, and then they coordinate with the IT administrators to ensure that this is or is not, known or not known, and this is or is not within the baseline operations as intended, you know. And so it's amazing if it was down to a single individual, you know, group, kind of like, you know, Hack the Planet, that movie Hackers, where they had two people sitting at a big console and they're just typing away, you know, Penn Jillette is sitting there with a long ponytail hacking away at the computer, and oh, we can close them out here, close them out here, close them out here. It's very rare that you would see some type of information security actually acting in that manner, where they're actually making on the spot configuration changes to an entire network, unless they're an active administrator as well as an investigator. It's usually okay, so what's the difference between CrowdStrike and Splunk? CrowdStrike and Splunk. CrowdStrike's an EDR. Splunk is a log aggregation unit. If you did Splunk ES, that is enterprise security version of Splunk. So they also have case management and API inclusion in there as well. Do these tend to work with telemetry designed for non-security incidents? E.g., could you point these at Splunk, Graylog, etc.? Yes, you could. Ideally, so we're talking about more of the infrastructure of anything that you have available to you, dump it in, and you want to aggregate into a centralized collection point, like you guys talked about, Splunk and Graylog, as well as, and that could be just, you know, some form of structured query language or repository, and then with that, you also at some point you need to standardize it. So with that, I think, did I throw up those? So with that, I threw up as an example. This is only an example. The common information modeling from Splunk allows you to standardize the log ingest that you're getting from multiple different types of vendors. So should you ever have to change out one of those vendors, it doesn't really matter. And you don't have to rewrite all of the work that you've done to create, you know, use cases, reporting, information modeling, dashboards. If you standardize the actual output of these log types bit by bit, and you can ingest them into whatever your actual provider is for your SIM instance. And then with that and that standardization, that's when you can actually get into threat hunting. Now, again, this is big data analytics. This is what I would actually compare where I was talking phishing earlier, where you go out and you want to write a script to go and do all your collection and then pull it all back to you. That's phishing type of, you know, threat hunting versus hunting, where you actually like are able to look and see and to look around and determine what's weird and then change your direction and flow as you move about. I would say that when you have that much data available to you, you are capable of on the fly making hypothesis decisions and not having to do a process intensive revision of what your consideration is. It takes nothing for you to spin in a 360, right? If you think that the deer has gone that way, you can just turn that way and go. Whereas when you're fishing, especially if you don't have a boat or something like that and you're on the shore, if you think that the fish are all the way across the lake, you then have to travel all the way across the lake, which means taking everything, picking up and going. You know what I mean? Throw a net based on previous fish reports. You're not exactly wrong, Tani. I mean, that's not bad, and that's kind of like what it is, but you still have to know roundabout where it is that you're trying to catch, right? And what those right and left limits are, and then you still have to deal with getting the net set up, carrying it out there, and actually either if you're doing a bait caster or you're doing a big trolled net. I know an unusually large amount about hunting and fishing for some reason. Don't ask me why. Anyway, so with that, I hope that really does kind of help into, you know, we're getting up to towards the top of the hour, but I mean, please throw any questions in chat. I mean, but I don't actually fish often. Hardly, I haven't gone fishing in 7 or 8 years. It's just I'm from the South. I was in Florida. I mean, God, almost everyone in their teens fishes in Florida in some way. NXAHX. I'm having to choose a specialization for colleges here, network and systems management or full stack, which splits into FS or AI in last year. What do you think is better for cybersecurity? Cloud native, automation. Okay. Um, what is I'll answer that, but which splits into, do you mean when you say FS, do you mean full stack or full stack which splits into either full stack or AI in the last year? All right. I'm assuming that's what you mean. So yeah, full stack. Okay, I'm assuming that's what that means. Okay, cool. So with that, well, it depends on what type of environment you want to work in as far as what specialization you choose. I personally do. I'm finishing it, working to finish it right now. But my background and my college background is in a management degree for cybersecurity systems and network management as well. So I'm partial there, just to let you know that's my bias. However, and have I used what I learned in that? Yes, there are things that I learned in the courseware and the course that I definitely use, and I think that you can understand without, you don't necessarily need to go to college, right? We know and we agree that I'm never going to tell somebody not to. I'm just saying you don't need to. What I mean by not to, I mean, like, if you're in college, I'm not going to tell you to quit. Sorry, I said that weird. I don't know why I said it that way. When you're talking about a specialization for this particular option that you have, full stack means that you plan on going into software development of some form. Okay. Can you work in application security? 100%. Can you work in application development? Correct. There's all sorts of areas that you can work in. If you went full stack, you would have plenty of jobs, where working in cloud, developing applications, doing the security around it. Yeah, application testing is definitely a thing that is there. Networks and systems management, though, I would personally say that sounds more in line with breaking into an enterprise for security. You're talking the difference between developing for applications and stuff. And the thing is I have people that I've talked to about before that are application developers, and they're, working in a startup environment, and they're starting up from the ground up. And I'm like, hey, if you ever want to talk to me about security, let me know. And we'll, I can work with you on that. And their response was, we're good, man. Security is actually really easy when you do it right. From an application perspective, it's and I used to get really annoyed by that. It kind of felt like a backhanded compliment. Then I realized what they're talking about. When you talk about independent, single application, and secure coding, then yes, especially depending on the side, yes, security for that can be simple. What I deal with, and what a lot of people get into security to deal with, is the ecosystem of technology that is an enterprise network for a large scale company, getting all the ins and outs to work together with all the business processes in a manner that is secure when you're big and you're targeted all the time, while still enabling mobility. That is difficult. Trying to get, 10, 20, 50 different types of software to all play nicely together globally without introducing major risk to a breach of your network or your data. That's where you specialize in. Again, I'm not one way or the other. I would suggest that if you want to do applications, coding, and development work, as well as application security, if you want to go into that form of security, which can also open up with the coding and everything else like that, can open up into malware analysis, reverse engineering, I mean, that would give you a really good foundational element to go into and understand software and reverse engineering and all that stuff as well. Or, I mean, even security development. There's still tools constantly that need to be developed, right? If you prefer to then go into enterprise, which would be getting Windows, Macs, and Windows and Macs to securely work together on the same network with the same user management process through HR, while at the same time monitoring from EDR, monitoring via EDR, XDR, and anything else, and getting it all to work together pretty in a way that is manageable and actually provides a return on investment. You know, that would be the networking and security stuff. So it's depends on you. All right, with that, just to recap what we were talking about tonight, as because I know I kind of used a lot of metaphors and everything. Specifically, I was talking about the two primary forms of log management for threat hunting. You can either do the phishing type, quote unquote, where you know what you're looking for in advance. You schedule just to collect the relevant logs or check the areas for the relevant logs. And if they do or do not exist, then you pull back what is relevant and then you continue your investigation that way, which is, like I said, is the type of toss and come back type of a phishing style, if you will. Then you have the other type, which is more enterprise management. Now, for the toss and the scripting and the go and the collect, anytime that you want to change your hypothesis, you have to do a setup period, which can be, and then you have to throw the actual collection, which can be labor intensive. Versus when you do the enterprise style setup, the engineering behind it takes a long time. It does, and it can be expensive. But at that point, once you're done with that bare line entry of setup, and you go to threat hunt and you have a centralized version of all the logs collected and you know how to move through a SIM, well, then it's perfect, right? Because you can move wherever you want to and check whatever you have available to you. You know where the logs came from. You know how everything's set up. You know what you're looking for. And you can just take things like a news article that says, this is all the public listings currently that we know of for Cobalt Strike reporting. And you can say, I wonder, do we have anybody talking to Cobalt Strike? And then you just simply go, I wonder if source IP or destination IP equals any of these with OR statements. Boom, and search. And that's how quickly you can do that. So that's the difference there. With that, that's with the collection, the aggregation, your transformation and your standardization. Make sure that the logs talk to each other. And that goes for either or. Whenever you're collecting, try and name them the key values. Make sure that they're named correctly. I might need to go into key values and really talk about key versus data architecture later, but that's much heavier on the data analytics. I don't know. You guys tell me what you think in Discord. And yeah, we're coming up to the top of the hour. And then analytics, and we'll be going into analytics. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. We're doing an ongoing series of about 6 weeks. We're on week number 2 of a threat hunting primer. The purpose of this is just to really provide things for consideration, as well as resources that you can go and review and take a look at if you want to get into threat hunting. I got a lot of requests for threat hunting. I'm pretty experienced with it. So we're talking about all the things that are necessary in order to do a threat hunt, and the types of skill sets and the things that you might experience through the processes, as a precursor, a premiere to threat hunting. Have you ever worked with a malware reverser or a reverse engineer, or do you mean like a reverser as in software, and or theory? I don't know how to say your name. If you're talking about reverser as in like a debug program. Yeah, Ollie Debug. I've done some work with it. Not my cup of tea personally. I really just don't like staring at x86 and trying to understand everything that's behind it. So I tend to stick to the higher level processes and things. You can also do sandboxing. Sandboxing is pretty much as technical as I'll get. Sandboxing and strings or even packaging. You know, I know that I know plenty about it, but again, I don't like stepping through the processor level commands. It's just not my type of Friday night. So, all right, guys, we are hitting the top of the hour. The top of the hour. Whoa. So we're coming to the end of the night. I really want to thank my mods for their ongoing work and the support that they provide us in the channel. I definitely want to thank you guys for coming and showing up. Again, thank you so much for the raid, the ex-developer, with your party of 7. I appreciate that so much again. But thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. It really is a lot of fun to do this. I do enjoy it every week. I try and show up, and you guys keep showing up for me, so I really do appreciate it. Hit exclamation point Discord if you want to come talk in a little bit. Hit exclamation point SecIT guy. Shoot me a message. Let me know if you'd like to see things to stay the way they are or continue or change. Hit exclamation point merch if you'd like to pick up some of our nice, really sweet Tipsy Cyber swag. And yeah, I definitely appreciate you guys for being here. So here is a cheers to you. Work like you don't need the money. Love like you've never been hurt. Dance like no one is watching. Screw like it's being filmed. And drink like a true Irishman. From Anonymous. Cheers to you guys. Be safe. Have a great weekend. Until next time. Hey, thanks for watching. I want to thank Neil and the Cyber Insecurity channel for providing a place to have real conversations with real people. Feel free to throw a like or to follow me on the socials in the description. Please remember to click subscribe, hit that notification bell, and if you want to see other videos, click that stuff that's all over the screen. See you next time.